That work? Can everyone hear me if I do that? And can everyone hear me if I do that? Brilliant. Hello, and welcome to the third BioBlitz Conference. We are all here presumably because we have something to do with BioBlitz. These amazing 24-hour or longer or shorter, however you want to play it, events where we go out and we find lots of wildlife with members of the public, school groups, each other. We all just basically go out and find stuff. My name is Matt. For those of you that don't know me, I work for a charity here in Bristol called the Bristol Natural History Consortium, which is made up of lots of different organisations which all come together and do public engagement wildlife stuff, is the best way, probably the short way to describe it. As part of my role there, I run the National BioBlitz network, or coordinate, or community manage, however you want to term it. So I basically run the website, I email everyone, pester everyone to send me various bits of information, and we do bits of research to find out how BioBlitz works across the UK. We first got involved in BioBlitz by running our own Bristol BioBlitz in 2009. One of the first to do it in the country, not the first, but we were one of the first to do it in a big way, and we worked with partners such as Natural History Museum, the Marine Biological Association, to do a big thing in 2010 then, where we encouraged lots and lots of other people to start taking up this concept. Before I go any further, I do have a few just bits of housekeeping for the venue. Thanks very much to Armada House for hosting us. And what we do have, so there are no fire drills planned for today. So if you do hear a loud, horrible bell, the building might be on fire. We have a fire exit here, and there is another one basically straight out through the front doors that you came in. And there is an assembly point, which is basically on the cobbled path over that way. Toilets are just around the corner if anyone needs them. There's also the ladies just here, or there's up the stairs, and then gents is further round the little corridor on the right. If anyone wants to do any tweeting or general onlineness, we do have Wi-Fi, and it's Armada House is the network, and then conference in all small letters is the password. We do have, you might have noticed, we've got some filming going on today. These are some of the guys from the UE Wildlife Filmmaking Masters course who are going to be filming the conference for us today. So we'll be able to collect all of this and share it with anyone who hasn't been able to come along today. I know that some of you have come quite a long way, so thank you very much for that. Also on that point, thanks very much to NHBS, who sponsored our bursary program and have lots of stuff in the other room for you to have a look at. And so some of you, I know, have benefited from that. If you are on the bursary program and would like to collect your reimbursement, we will have a chat with you at the end, or just come and collar either me or Maddie. So my little bit at the beginning is basically just to welcome you all here. And then I've actually been doing, as some of you know and some of you have contributed to, and thank you very much for that, I've been doing a bit of research around the history of BioBlitz in the UK, how people are getting on with it, what perceptions there are in various bits and pieces. So it's quite a long thing, but I just wanted to share right at the beginning the very briefest of outlines of some of the stuff that we found out on that. There we go. So what do we do at a BioBlitz? What's it all about? Well, what we define a BioBlitz as in our new guide that you all should have is a collaborative race against the clock to discover as many species of plants, animals, and fungi as possible within a set location over a defined time period. And that's usually 24 hours, but obviously there's variation. And we involve lots of different strands in a BioBlitz quite often. So quite a big one, public engagement. We get people involved in the outdoors, and there's quite a lot of policy and rhetoric going on about this, and all stuff being developed as recently as well. For example, the outcome 4 of the DEFRA policy for Biodiversity 2020 very much highlights that by 2020, significantly more people will be engaged in biodiversity issues, aware of its value and taking positive action. So if ever there was a piece of policy or a piece of government ambition that we were to pin BioBlitz to, I think that's it. We also do biological recording at a BioBlitz. We collect as much information as we can about the wildlife that's there whilst we share it with people. And recently in the State of Nature report, I've got a quote here, that we owe most of our knowledge of these changes in biodiversity to amateur wildlife recorders. So collecting these records really does matter. We get people out and about exploring their local green spaces, community involvement, giving people a sense of stewardship, localism. We involve volunteers, some of them with us today as well. Lots of activity. I don't know why there's a picture of me there now, but getting skills sharing, getting both young volunteers, students, and getting them learning from more experienced naturalists. Partnerships. At BioBlitz, quite often, it seems to attract a partnership way of working. It usually works really well if you get lots of people with different experience coming together, and those sort of networking opportunities that come through that are really, really valuable. It gets attention. The word BioBlitz is I think we've argued about it a lot before in previous conferences and things as to how useful it is. But one of the things it does definitely do is attract attention from the media and other things. And they're fun. And it's really important to highlight that to get people involved and to get people started, really making it enjoyable is quite a big part of the outdoors. So I have a very brief history of BioBlitz in the UK. So the first events were in Lincolnshire in 2006, and Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust ran 3 or 4 events over a few years. But didn't do a lot of shouting about it. So there's actually not very much that we were able to find out about those early BioBlitzes in the UK. The idea originated in America in the 90s, but that's the first record of it coming over here. Then, as I say, in 2009, ourselves, the Natural History Museum, Marine Biological Association ran quite a lot. Since then, when we've had this network going and sharing ideas, we've had about 264 events since 2006, which is quite a lot, actually, over quite a short time when you consider that only 4 of those were before 2009. And based on our calculations, we reckon there's about 82,500 visitors come along to BioBlitzes and 6,770 volunteers. So we're hitting quite a large number of people with this concept, which this very nice bubble graph shows quite nicely is that so up the side there is the number of events growing up the Y scale the year, and then the size of the blob is the total number of participants in BioBlitz in that year. So as you can see, in 2010, when we had an awful lot of activity, and that is partly down to the Natural History Museum doing a BioBlitz in Alexandra Palace, which attracted 8,000 people to take part in. Our own Bristol BioBlitz that year at Blaise Castle had an estimate of 4,000 people as well. So that was relatively few events, but with huge audiences. And then 2011, we see actually the network didn't have very much activity. We had no funding to run the network centrally at all, so some of that momentum was lost a little bit there. But we picked up again and have actually seen more of a pattern towards more events, but with smaller audiences, so more small BioBlitzes rather than the very few large ones. So just some of the trends that we identified. What I've done is I've just very quick, to make this quick, I've tried to just break this down into a few bullet points about what we found for each of the different audiences of a BioBlitz. So we say one of them is event organizers, so most of you guys. We found that event organizers have very diverse aims and objectives with a BioBlitz. It's such a, each BioBlitz is so different and has such different priorities that we see really quite different aims and objectives. However, most events sort of self-identify that they have been successful in meeting those objectives. And have really said that the networking and the partnerships and the talking to new people has really been the biggest, most surprising outcomes in some cases. For individuals who come along, enjoyment is was identified as such a big part of the BioBlitz. But also, most of the people that filled in surveys for us were able to cite back some sort of knowledge that they'd gained, or talk about skills that they gained at the BioBlitz, whether it was learning how to use a bat detector, how to do moth trapping, or a new fact about some wildlife that they'd picked up from one of the naturalists. And most said that most identified that they would go on to do something else as well, whether that be encouraging wildlife into their garden, go on to another event. So there's a sort of inspiring positive action there. And this is just this is a wordle of some of the responses that we got. Obviously, a badger watch was particularly popular in the bottom right there. But really, one of the interesting things actually was that children very much identified practical things when they talked about, used words like finding, finding, touching, seeing, very much doing those. Whereas adults tended more to identify actually that meeting very knowledgeable people or meeting really enthusiastic people was a really big part of their experience. For community outcomes, we had a very mixed bag as well. For an event that we sort of extol ourselves on engaging new audiences and people who are hard to reach. But actually, in some groups, we didn't find that in the research. And maybe it's partly, it could be seen to be part of our things to think about for today. Diverse age groups, we actually do really well on. Do I have a pie chart? I do. I have an amazing pie chart. Actually, our split across the age groups is pretty well covered. We have the sort of standard 11 to 16 drop-off, the teenage years of doom. But other than that, we are actually, as a collective, that might not be representative of each individual BioBlitz, but as a collective, BioBlitz is covering the bases pretty well on age. However, when you come to black and minority ethnic groups, our research didn't pull out a single person from our sample of just over 100 people that was not of a white ethnic origin. So whether that's the way that we're conducting our research or whether that's a genuine reflection, it'd be interesting to get some of the anecdotal notes about that as well. And outdoor learning, I think what I mean by that is engaging with schools. And some BioBlitzes engage schools and put on a specific schools activity, about 15% of them do. And those ones usually engage quite large numbers of people. So we do it. I think there is an opportunity there to do that a lot more as well. We'll see economic outcomes. There's some BioBlitzes and some have an intention of attracting attention or attracting funds from visitor spending, from membership drives and things like that. That could be a motivation for running a BioBlitz. What we've seen is that actually visitor spending is really quite high at BioBlitzes on average. However, it's very much localized to those events that have things like visitor centers. They have a cafe on site, so it's not evenly spread. But the average spend per visitor is about £6 at a BioBlitz. So there is, which if you were able to get that over everybody who was in there, actually BioBlitz could pay for itself in visitor spending in terms of the amount it costs to run an event. However, actually having the infrastructure to do that and whether all that money comes back to your event organizer and not off to external people, caterers, etc. So it's not really that practical. There also seems to be a bit of a missing opportunity there for event sponsorship. Very few events fund their event in other ways other than in-kind and core costs. So one of the opportunities there might be to further explore how we approach sponsors. And what we don't know is whether that's because we're not approaching sponsors, we're not thinking about that as a viable way of funding these events, or whether we are just not being successful in those approaches. So it would also be interesting to have a chat about that sort of thing as well. Environmental outcomes. We generate a lot of data through BioBlitzes. Richard Cobont, who's not here, actually advised me that that number of records that, so 113,000 is the estimated number of records that have been submitted to local record centres and online systems like iRecord since 2006 with the first BioBlitzes from BioBlitzes. We also identified, though, that about 15% of BioBlitz data never gets to one of the recognised repositories. It sits somewhere in a drawer. So there's definitely which is, if that translates across the whole thing, that's 20,000 records which have gone in a drawer and been wasted. So really making sure that those get to the right places is really important. But we are hitting lots and lots of data. But as I was saying, Richard, one of our naturalists who works at a lot of BioBlitzes, suggested that that's about 10 years of his work to collect that many. So that's that's a graph of where everyone's sending their BioBlitz data. So whether it's going to a local environmental record centre, most actually either are a local environmental record centre running the BioBlitz, or they are partnering with one, or they submit them on afterwards. Then there's the online recording systems like Giggle in London and iRecord. And then, as you see, there's a chunk there which are either not recorded or not sure what they've done with them. So in terms of the network activity, what I do in the centre, and we have the resources and the website and online things, not everyone knows about everything that we do as a network and the things that are on offer. There's actually some of the resources that we are on offer have less than half of people being aware of them or using them. So that's a bit of a thing for us to look at as well, how we make sure that we're sharing those more effectively. But we have seen that it is actually useful. There's quite a good correlation with how much budget we have to work with and how many people get involved in BioBlitzes. So that's my trying to justify my own existence for that one as well. So that was just a few things to feed into and think about in your discussions. If anyone wants to have a chat with me about some of the actual numbers behind any of this, then please do. And I think there we go, and there's just those things again. So I'd like to hand over now to our first session chair, Dom MacDonald from Science Oxford, who runs the Oxford BioBlitz, and who has also done various other things. Do you want to introduce yourself, Dom? That's probably easier, isn't it?